All right, let's dive right into this explainer and decode India's long-term geopolitical and economic strategy. Now, if you follow global affairs, you've probably seen a ton of headlines framing India's trajectory purely through the lens of whatever current event is happening today. But the evidence actually shows us something completely different. It's far more than just a reaction to global tensions. Today, we're going to look at the hard data, the infrastructure, and the policies to understand exactly how India is positioning itself for the future.
We really have to start by challenging a very common assumption. In a lot of Western strategic circles, there's this big tendency to view India's rise primarily as just a reactionary buffer against Chinese expansion in the Indo-Pacific. But as our sources reveal, there is a much more complex, proactive, and independent strategy at play here. India isn't just trying to balance out another power, it's actively building a foundational architecture for its own unique role on the global stage.
And here's a number that really puts that independent rise into perspective. While India currently holds roughly 4% of global GDP, it actually contributes a massive 17% to global growth. To put that into context for you, India is essentially adding the economic equivalent of a country like Vietnam to its GDP every single year. Its economic engine is absolutely no longer a peripheral player. It's become a structural, load-bearing pillar of the entire world economy.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 1. Redefining the superpower paradigm. 2. The U.S.-India institutional shift. 3. Data as a strategic asset. 4. Diversifying global partnerships. And 5. Vision 2047, 3 revolutions.
Section 1. Redefining the superpower paradigm. Proposition over opposition.
This is where things get really fascinating, when you contrast the approaches of the world's two massive emerging economies. While China relies heavily on physical diplomacy, building massive physical infrastructure projects like the Belt and Road Initiative, India leans heavily into what experts are calling digital and conversational diplomacy. So instead of just building physical ports, India is exporting open-source digital public infrastructure and hosting inclusive Global South dialogues. It's a whole strategy built on digital inclusion and strategic trust rather than physical infrastructure debt.
Section 2. The U.S.-India institutional shift. Beyond the White House.
If we only look at the unpredictable political rhetoric of the day, we totally miss the underlying structural reality of this relationship. We really need to contrast the noisy political mood with the institutional reality on the ground. Because regardless of who happens to be sitting in the White House, there is this deep, state-level economic and technological integration happening. When major tech CEOs like Tim Cook make massive manufacturing investments, or when every major AI platform leader stands alongside India's leadership, it highlights a deep institutional partnership. It's built on economic opportunity that completely transcends any single election cycle.
The really crucial point here is that what the Atlantic Council calls this great power partnership relies on 4 shared strategic fronts, rather than traditional treaty alliances. India has historically totally shunned formal treaties. So instead, this relationship is advancing through defense co-production, incredibly cost-effective space exploration, shaping AI digital governance, and a shared interest in bringing the Global South into the rules-based international order.
I absolutely love this quote. India and America had an arranged marriage. In the next renewal of vows, let us spark some passion. This metaphor just perfectly captures the shift. Historically, ties between the U.S. and India were built on pragmatic, strategic necessity, usually centered around shared concerns. But to actually weather political unpredictability moving forward, this relationship needs deep, sustainable investments. It needs that passion of mutual, proactive creation rather than just defensive cooperation.
Let's move to Section 3. Data as a strategic asset, the new iron ore.
We're entering an era where data is literally the most valuable resource on the planet, and India is sitting on a massive strategic reserve of it. India's tech diplomacy framework isn't just about consuming technology. It is a highly structured, intentional approach. Through the India AI mission, digital public infrastructure, and capacity building, India is actively exporting a replicable, inclusive model to the Global South. It's firmly positioning itself as the normative link between developing societies and technologically advanced economies.
But there is a massive strategic vulnerability here. As the source material bluntly points out, being the world's undeniable #1 in data consumption is a double-edged sword. Right now, Indian data is largely underwriting the bottom lines in AI models of massive multinational platforms. So the urgent strategic need for India is to leverage its data sovereignty. They need this resource to generate value at home, rather than just acting as a giant digital extraction farm for someone else. To counter that dynamic, India is going on the offensive with the India Stack, By exporting systems like the UPI payment interface and the Aadhaar digital identity to over 200 million people globally, India is utilizing its digital infrastructure as an incredibly powerful diplomatic tool. It provides low-cost, open-source governance to developing nations, which ends up building immense geopolitical trust and soft power along the way.
Section 4. Diversifying global partnerships. The multi-aligned roadmap.
It's important to understand that India's strategy absolutely does not rely solely on Western powers. In fact, to fuel its growth, it actively seeks out diverse, non-traditional alliances. India is brilliantly mapping its massive hunger for resources and supply chain security directly to practical global partnerships. It's not just about Washington or London. It's about Indonesia for maritime security and trade. It's about Argentina for cooking oil and securing lithium mines for electric vehicles. It's looking to Uzbekistan for rare earth metals. And it's actively competing in Africa's telecom and automotive sectors.
Now, to make all these relationships actually work, India is trying to move away from those outdated, purely transactional alliances. Instead, the focus is squarely on what experts term procreative partnerships. This basically means engaging in relationships that foster long-term mutual growth, secure supply chains, and actually co-create value. They want to ensure that as India's economy expands, its partner nations experience tangible economic benefits right alongside them.
Section 5, Vision 2047, 3 Revolutions.
Let's zoom all the way into the domestic front now, because honestly, foreign policy means absolutely nothing without the internal revolutions required to sustain it by the year 2047, which is the centenary of India's independence. According to strategic analysis, India has to achieve 3 sequential domestic transformations: the human, energy, and digital revolutions. These are the absolute foundation of its journey to becoming a fully developed nation. Without them, the geopolitical ambitions just collapse.
First up is the human revolution. Uniquely, Indian households already have this massive cultural desire to spend heavily on education, so the demand is already there. The revolution requires fixing the product side of the market, basically maturing the education system so that it actually delivers real-world competence, specialized skills, and knowledge that matches up with the brutal demands of a modern global economy.
Next is the energy revolution. And yes, obviously it's about transitioning from wood to gas to solar grids, but the deeper socioeconomic impact here is democratizing energy to break a vicious cycle. As the sources note, instead of women acting as the physical providers of energy, literally carrying firewood or heavy cylinders, the goal is for women to ride on energy. Democratize smart grids, free up human capital, which massively boosts female labor force participation and enterprise. It's a total game changer.
The third is the digital revolution. And this goes way beyond just watching videos on a smartphone. It's about profound financial inclusion. By integrating everyday citizens into the formal financial ecosystem using digital IDs like Aadhaar, India is turning simple digital identities into true economic passports. This unlocks unprecedented access to credit, housing, and formal market participation for literally hundreds of millions of people.
And underpinning all these revolutions is India's democratic advantage. While it is noisy and incredibly complex, India's vibrant democracy actually provides a unique trust factor globally. It boasts institutional stability, extreme political diversity, and unparalleled social mobility that allows everyday underdogs to rise to the highest offices in the land. This democratic resilience is a massive competitive advantage in a highly volatile world.
To truly leverage all of this, consider this incredible insight from our sources. The first big free trade agreement India needs to sign is with itself. Integrating its own domestic market, connecting 1.4 billion citizens into one seamless, efficient economic zone is the ultimate catalyst. When India fully unleashes that internal potential, international investment is basically going to follow naturally.
So, we want to leave you with this provocative thought. As India matures its domestic market and exports its digital and civilizational stack to the global south, how is it going to wield this new power? Will it settle for just being a veto power that simply blocks what it dislikes, or will it step up to be the positive foundational architect of a brand new global order? The data definitely suggests the latter, but the next decade is going to be the ultimate test. Thank you so much for joining us on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.